Hi, I'm Jeff Morrow. I want to welcome you to True Texas History. And today we're going to be talking about W. Lee O'Daniel, otherwise known as Pappy O'Daniel, and the Light Crust Doughboys. You know, this is one of those stories that have characters that very much larger than life. Hard to believe that this came from Texas, but at one point, Pappy O'Daniel, he was running the Burris Flour Mill, which later on became known as the Light Crust Flour Mill, and times were tough during the Depression, and so he hired some musicians to promote his product. He was a great promoter, promoted a lot of things, and he put together a band of some out-of-work musicians and called them the Light Crust Doughboys. And this band went touring with him. Initially it was just to promote his radio show and his flour. They called it, hillbilly flour. And the Light Crust Doughboys, they were influential in music in some major ways, because this was essentially the big start for what they call Western swing music. And who was one of the Light Crust Doughboys but none other than the legendary Bob Wills. Later on it became Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, but at this point it's the Light Crust Doughboys. But they would tour Texas. I mean, he literally, they outfitted a bus with speakers, and they would go town to town and just stop impromptu at stores, and literally taking the music to the people. And the people loved it. His radio show was all about what he called promoting hillbilly flour, the Ten Commandments, and the Bible. That was what he promoted. Now, at one point, Pappy Lee O'Daniel got a notion that he wanted to run for governor of Texas. This is someone who had no political experience. He was running a radio show, and although he had decided he wanted to run, he put it to his listeners, to see if they wanted him to run. And sure enough, he had quite a few listeners, in the thousands, that went ahead and told him that they wanted him to run. So he ran for governor back in 1938, and he won. And a lot of people didn't give him, a snowball's chance of having won the governorship. And he was still talking about, the hillbilly flowers, the Ten Commandments, and the Bible, and these types of values. Being that he wasn't a politician, he and the state legislature didn't get along. There were some records during his governorship for, the highest number of vetoes, and of course, the legislature was trying to override his stuff, and it made for quite an experience. Now, also during that time, because keep in mind, 1938, heading on into the 40s, we're starting to head on into World War II, and Pappy O'Daniel, history has not been kind to him. I think it's because he made a lot of enemies along the way, and one of the things he did, he decided to take on UT, because he considered UT the home of a lot of subversives at that point. He even had evidence, that there was a professor there handing out socialist literature. Now, bear in mind, here in Texas, unless you lived through that period of time, it's hard to conceive of the fearfulness of people. People were scared of communism, and they were scared of the Nazis, and they knew that both of them were threats. And Pappy O'Daniel was willing to do something about it and to root out what he considered subversive professors at UT. that were teaching socialist ideas and promoting their agenda. I'm sure he'd have a field day if he was governor now. But he developed some enemies, namely Homer Rainey, excuse me. And he plays into Texas politics later on. But the history books say that he didn't accomplish much. I think that is probably because his agenda and the agenda of the state legislature were going two different directions back then, and he was willing to take stands and stick by a lot of his values, and politicians don't always do that. So anyways, after that, in 1941, he decided he was going to run for Senate because there was a vacancy, and this was the election that I talked about the other day, where he beat out LBJ, and LBJ decided at that point that he's never going to let that happen again. And but Pappy Lee O'Daniel is one of the colorful characters that you see in history. After he was elected senator, there were some interesting things going on, because although Roosevelt's New Deal was popular with a lot of people, it wasn't popular with O'Daniel. O'Daniel had stirred up a lot of stink because he was willing to stand up to Roosevelt and speak out against Roosevelt, and he also had some other senators as well as representatives up there that felt the same way, and they were fighting the idea of the U.S. getting entangled with a lot of things going on in Europe. He would approach Roosevelt about socialists in the government, and Roosevelt dismissed him, said, there are no socialists in the government. And he wrote him off as kind of a crackpot. But there was a lot going on then, because and O'Daniel's not the only one that was of this mindset. You also find Martin Dies and a few others that were convinced that there was a lot of corruption in the government and bad things were going on. Unfortunately, they weren't listened to at that point. But he's a character that often gets glossed over, and I think is painted by some historians now in a negative light. I think we need, people like Pappy O'Daniel back to good old-fashioned virtues. I mean, can you imagine, somebody running for governor now, campaigning on the healthy hillbilly flour, 10 Commandments, and the Bible? Oh yeah, and the Golden Rule. That would change things. But give you something to think about, and hopefully you can appreciate more about Pappy Lee O'Daniel, Western swing music, Bob Wills, and how all this fits together. So until next time, vaya con Dios. See ya.